What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson, and we're still going to be reacting to yesterday's loss for the New York Giants against the Philadelphia Eagles. Once again, going to start this by saying prayers to Cam Scaboo. I told you guys when we get more information on his injury, we will update you, and what we got has not been super encouraging. He had to be rushed to the hospital yesterday following the game in order to have emergency surgery for an open dislocation on his ankle. Now, we don't have an exact timeline for recovery, but it's going to be a lengthy one. It's going to be a difficult one. So we're just going to say prayers to Cam Scaboo. This is just going to be a bump in the road in an otherwise legendary career. I have the utmost belief in Scaboo. I know he's going to work hard and he's going to recover. And I can't wait to see him play football again because he is my favorite player on the New York Giants right now. So that sucks. Want to get that out of the way. But in today's episode, we are going to go ahead and focus on Jaxson Dart because if there is a positive to draw from yesterday's loss, from the previous week's loss against the Denver Broncos, well, Jaxson Dart's been battling in these losses. He's been battling in these wins, and he's looked really good. Tom Brady shared a lot of praise for him during the Fox broadcast yesterday. Everybody has been praising Jaxson Dart because he's been super impressive. But that's why we want to talk about how the New York Giants are going to derail his development if they don't start putting the pieces in place to support him. Because right now he has little to no support, especially considering these injuries that this Giants offense has suffered, with Malik Neighbors going down with a torn ACL in Week 4, and now Cam Scaboo confirmed to be out for the rest of the season. This is an offense that is depleted of all of its best playmakers, and it's now being carried by a rookie quarterback who was selected 25th overall. That's not okay. That's not sustainable. And the New York Giants need to do something to try and fix this. And that's what we're going to try and discuss in today's episode, how the Giants can save Jaxson Dart from the mess that they've put him in. So, Alex, we'll go ahead and kick it off. How are you doing today, my friend? Obviously, we're all pretty disappointed in yesterday's game, and especially the news of Scaboo's injury. But when you're looking at Jaxson Dart and the Giants, what can they do to try and get things back on the right track for his development?
Yeah, man. I mean, listen, this morning was a difficult one to process. It just feels like the hits keep on hitting. You know, the sucker punches are not a once-in-a-while thing. It's a weekly thing. You lose Neighbors, you lose this guy, you lose Adebo. I mean, goodness gracious. I mean, Bobby Okereke knocked Cordell Flott out cold yesterday. If that's not a perfect example of this Giants team punching themselves in the face, I don't know what is. And listen, Cam Scaboo, all the prayers up to him. That's going to be a difficult road for him moving forward. The injury he sustained was substantial. It was serious, but I've seen guys come back from much worse. So I think that he has got the work ethic. He's got the energy. He's got the fight. He will come back. It'll take time. This type of injury could be a year plus some. So at this rate, I think he'll return in 2026. It just might be during the second half of the season. And let's visualize it this way. The Giants have a better coaching staff by then. At least one with a winning pedigree. We'll see what that looks like long term. I think that they will have more playmakers. You know, Jaxson Dart will be in his second season, and you can kind of look at this team and say, Cam Scaboo is going to be a boost of energy. It's going to be a kind of a jolt at the right time when they're trying to make that push during the second half of the season. So that's the way I'm trying to picture it in my head. That's the positive spin. Trying to do that because obviously it's something you just didn't expect to happen, and it's football. Injuries happen. So, you know, you have to kind of take this and next man up mentality. Tyrone Tracy, we like Tracy. You know, he's a good player, and it's his opportunity to fight and show the Giants that he can be their guy. They got 2 RB1s. Like that's what the narrative should be right now. Cam Scaboo returns, he's RB1. Tyrone Tracy, you're also RB1. Having 2 guys like that is a benefit. But Jaxson Dart's development is in serious peril right now, and it's not because of what we've seen, it's because what we haven't seen yet. He is not going to be able to take steps forward in his growth and development without more talent around him. Losing Scaboo hurts like hell. Losing Neighbors hurts like hell. Darius Slayton is a waste of space on this football field. I know he had that OPI that called it back, but it can't just be one play where you show up and do something, dude. It has to be consistent throughout the game. I see other guys that are getting paid similar money, or even just similar players, just showing up throughout contests and providing more. Darius Slayton shied away from contact yesterday. He looked like he didn't want to play at times. He was not really doing much. It's just sad to see. It's not his fault entirely, but you expect more from the guys that you pay, and you expect more from the veterans on this roster to step up and give your rookie quarterback an opportunity. I think the Giants I think Wandale is a good player, and I think the Giants heavily underutilize him. I think they're going to have to start using him more frequently as an extension to the run game. Screens, some jet sweeps, like getting him more involved. They have no choice. But the Giants have to add a playmaker, and the reason is we already know what Jaxson Dart can do. He can extend plays with his legs. He can do it with his arm. He buys time. He makes turns negatives into positives. He does all those things great. But if he does not start to develop actual chemistry and actual success with another playmaker, it's gonna hurt the start of next season too, right? Because you're already going to be back where he doesn't have much chemistry with players. Scaboo won't be there. Neighbors is probably going to miss the first couple weeks. They need someone he can go into next year that they can trust to say, this guy and that guy, they have a close bond and they can win together. They can operate an offense together, a good security outlet. That's the next step in his development. And then the deep ball, that's something that he'll have to continue to work on as well. So, Anthony, what is your perception of Jaxson Dart's growth the rest of the season, what it needs to look like?
Well, I actually want to touch on that deep ball that you just mentioned because you mentioned it and I thought of something. I thought that we saw in yesterday's game Jaxson Dart growing in real time. Earlier in the game, he threw that deep ball down the left sideline to Devin Singletary. He didn't set his feet. He just kind of gunned it with just his shoulder, and it came up short. Singletary made an excellent catch, big-time play down the left sideline, but it wasn't a good throw. It was a catchable throw, sure, but even Tom Brady called it out on the broadcast. Had Jaxson Dart stepped into that and set his feet a little bit more and got a little bit more air and velocity on it, he probably would have had a walk-in touchdown to Devin Singletary. And then, Alex, just a few plays or a few drives later, he steps into a deep throw, right on the money, dime downfield to Darius Slayton. So he recognized on that first throw, man, I didn't set my feet well enough. I didn't get that throw. I didn't get as much on that throw as I should have. I got to fix that. Next deep ball, boom, sets his feet, perfect dime downfield. I think that's what you want to see from him for the rest of the season. To ask your other question, or to answer your other question, what does this growth need to look like? It needs to look like that. Can he learn in real time and make adjustments and find ways to improve his game over the course of each game? Not over the course of the season, but in real time during these games. You make one mistake early in the game, then you correct it later in the game. That's high-level quarterbacking. That's growth in real time, and that's exciting. And that tells you that Jaxson Dart really does have something special to him. We talk about that it factor. We talk about that, that moxie and that mentality and that ability to just kind of adapt in real time. That's what we saw yesterday for Jaxson Dart, and I think we've seen that throughout these first 5 starts, and we'll hopefully continue to see that throughout the rest of the season, because that will give us the confidence that we need to carry that momentum going into 2026. But I want to kind of more largely answer your question about Jaxson Dart. What do we need to see from him? And just kind of give my thoughts on something specific here. I've seen Giants fans, now that we're 2-6, we just lost to the Broncos in embarrassing fashion. We just lost to the Eagles in embarrassing fashion. Some fans are saying the season's a wash. All the players that we have that we like are hurt. Let's just tank and try and get the highest pick possible. Guys, that is the worst possible thing for the New York Giants to do right now, and I need to try and get this point across. Losing is the number one thing that's going to stunt Jaxson Dart's growth. So to answer your question, Alex, what do we need to see from Jaxson Dart? We need to see winning football. We need to see the New York Giants supporting him and helping him win football games. If you heard him in that post-game press conference yesterday, you heard a kid that sounded like he was on the brink of an absolute explosion behind closed doors. And I bet you he went into that locker room and had a meltdown, and a justified one at that. He said that he was embarrassed because the Giants were dominated all throughout that game. He's right. He should be embarrassed. The team should be embarrassed. I am embarrassed to be a New York Giants fan when they perform that way. We all are. And so what the Giants need to do is make sure that Jaxson Dart doesn't become used to losing. He said during his press conference, I won't get used to this. I will never be okay with this. I will always hate this feeling. I will not be okay with losing. But we've heard Giants players say that in the past, and we've seen the Giants pile wins on top, or pile losses on top of those players and force them to become used to losing. They can't let that happen to this quarterback. When your quarterback becomes used to losing, that's when the entire team becomes complacent, becomes apathetic, and becomes terrible year in and year out, like we've seen for the past 7 years for the New York Giants. So priority number 1 for the rest of this year, how to help Jaxson Dart grow. You have to win some football games. There's no tanking. There's no taking plays off. There is putting balls to the wall and playing like every game matters, because you're playing for your quarterback and your quarterback's long-term growth, development, and success. So that's number 1 for me. And it ties into something else that I've said a lot recently, Alex. I've repeated this point many times, but every week it just becomes more relevant. The head coach is holding back this team. I think that is so readily apparent every single week that the coaching is an obvious problem. And I know the defensive coordinator, maybe arguably a larger problem. No, the head coach employs the defensive coordinator. The head coach game plans with the defensive coordinator. The coaching staff is an issue, and the coaching staff is causing the New York Giants to lose games. And we've had fans say, well, you can't fire the coach because this is Dable's guy, and Dable and Dart need to grow together, and Dart, he needs the continuity in 2026. That is not true. The only way that you're going to stunt Dart's growth is to force him to continue to lose. That's going to happen if you keep Dable. The other way that you're going to stunt his growth is if you force him to continue to be coached by a bad coach. That's also going to happen if you keep Brian Dable. Every week it becomes more and more apparent that the New York Giants need to clean this house. Jaxson Dart is such an exciting and talented, promising young quarterback. There is going to be a lineup of impressive coaching candidates eager to get their hands on Jaxson Dart and to coach this young quarterback. The Giants should have no issue finding a promising head coaching candidate to pair with their promising quarterback in the 2026 offseason. The only way you're going to stunt this promising talent's growth is by forcing him to be coached by a bad head coach and forcing him to lose an excess amount of games this season. So the New York Giants, they have to change something to make sure that they get some wins this season, and I do think that change starts and ends with the coaching staff. They got to make some changes before the year is done.
Yeah. You want to know how I know they should be fired? Because I watched multiple players yesterday make business decisions. This team doesn't fight, right? Jaxson Dart and Cam Scaboo, Brian Burns, those guys are fighting. Those guys were fighting for their lives, for their careers, for their seasons, for their future, for their present. I watched Darius Slayton avoid contact yesterday. I watched Deonte Banks barely even try in the run game. I watched Tyler Nubin stand there flat-footed and not crash into the zone on a wide-open running lane against Saquon Barkley. They're poorly coached. They have poor fundamentals. Some of their players are not trying. They're scared of playing football, and they don't have any respect for the coaching staff, right? Jaxson Dart is going to win no matter what. He's going to be a winner no matter what, whether Brian Dable is here or not, right? Go ask Drake May. Right? They fire May off that first season. Things looking pretty good in Patriots land right now, right? Drake May's kicking ass, and Mike Vrabel's kicking ass. A coaching staff that demands wins, that has a pedigree of winning, that's the difference between being a winner and a loser. Jaxson Dart's a winner right now, but they're going to kill that young kid's spirit, and they can't. John Mara cannot let this coaching staff do it to another player.
Exactly. They cannot kill this kid's spirit. They did it with Odell Beckham Jr. They did it with Daniel Jones. They cannot do it again with Jaxson Dart. And I love that you brought up the Drake May comparison. It's one that I brought up before because a lot of fans will go back and they'll say, well, the Giants, where they messed up, they fired Pat Shurmur after one season with Daniel Jones. That's not where they messed up. Pat Shurmur was a bad head coach. He was not a head coach. He was a good offensive coordinator. He was a bad head coach. Firing Pat Shurmur was not the issue. Hiring Joe Judge was the issue, right? The Joe Judge, Jason Garrett combo that stepped in. Right, exactly. And Jason Garrett as the OC.
Only the Giants.
That was the mistake that the New York Giants made. Honestly, now that we're seeing Daniel Jones have success in Indianapolis, you could probably say, hey, back then, when they did fire Pat Shurmur, had they hired a better coach following Pat Shurmur, maybe he could have been successful in New York, right? That is totally a possible outcome if things went differently in that 2020 offseason. So now you're looking at it with Jaxson Dart. If you're saying, you can't fire Dable because you're going to do what you did to Dart, what you did to Daniel Jones. Not true. Hire a good coach like the Patriots just did with Mike Vrabel and pairing him with and his staff with Drake May. That was the right way to go about it. Get rid of the bad coach, get the good coach in, and watch that young quarterback flourish. That's what the New York Giants need to replicate. They can't be afraid of the mistakes that they made in the past in 2019/2020 with Joe Judge. That was the mistake. Firing Shurmur wasn't the mistake. Get this coaching hiring right this offseason, and everybody will be happy because Jaxson Dart will flourish and the New York Giants will win football games in 2026.
Yeah, there's other elements that go into it too, like the fact that the Colts had already a good GM in place who developed one of the best offensive lines in football. Added Josh Downs, they have Michael Pittman, they have Jonathan Taylor, Tyler Warren. They have playmakers, a great offensive line, and a budding defense. The Giants GM cannot be absolved from the roles that they've played. Dave Gettleman's tenure was horrific, right? Joe Shane has his mid-round to late-round picks have been a ghost have been a ghost town. You look at the free agency signings. Guys, let me just point something out to you. Our best free agency signing over the last couple of years, Anthony, you want to know who it was? You know exactly who it was. My favorite guy on the freaking team.
Come on, say it.
Jermaine Illuminor, baby.
Yes, sir.
That's our best free agency signing of the last couple of years. You want to know why Joe Schoen signed Jermaine Illuminor? Because there was nothing else left. He signed Jermaine Illuminor as a hope and a prayer, not because he did actual analysis or it was a late free agency signing, if you don't recall. It wasn't one of the first things they did. It was one of the last things they did last offseason. Not this past one, but the one before that. It was like there's nobody else out there. He's cheap. Let's go sign him. He was basically their James Hudson, right? He was the James Hudson signing. James Hudson is basically a non-factor on this team. And Jermaine Illuminor was a good player. And Anthony, if you don't recall, we both sat here on the podcast and said, sign Jermaine Illuminor. He's a good football player. He has way more value than his price tag is indicating right now. Why are YouTubers and content creators making better decisions than the Giants front office? I don't know. That's a question you got to ask Joe. But the truth of the matter is, Jermaine Illuminor was the best rated pass protector on the team yesterday. He didn't give up a single pressure. Andrew Thomas gave up 4, had his worst game of the season, but obviously he's still fantastic. I have no qualms with Andrew Thomas. But Jermaine Illuminor is a guy that needs to be extended. And I don't know if Dable and Joe Schoen are going to survive this. I don't know if one of them will survive it or if neither of them will. But one thing is most certain. Joe Schoen has not done there's talent on this team, but we're seeing right now how bad the depth is, right? And also, his second-round picks have been horrific. Horrific. Tyler Nubin has been horrible.
Okay.
I'm not going to label Nubin a bust yet, but he is a well below average athlete who does not understand how to actually play against specific players. And he does not understand positioning. He has horrible makeup speed. He can't cover. He's a bad football player right now. There's time for him to get it right, but he's a bad football player. We cannot be waiting 4 years to get value from guys like Cordell Flott. It's unacceptable levels of development and evaluation of talent. We have Andrew Phillips, Anthony, should be one of the best slot cornerbacks in football, but they're not helping him grow. They're not developing him well enough. They have bad coaching. It's a complete just mess from top to bottom. And I know John Mayer doesn't want to clean house, and I actually don't think he's going to fire Joe Schoen, even though I think he should. I don't think he's going to. But I think the coaching staff is going to be cleaned from top to bottom, and it's going to be there will be head coaches lined up to take over because of Jaxson Dart. That's the only reason.
Absolutely, there will be. I can think of several good coaching candidates off the top of my head that I think would jump at the opportunity to coach Jaxson Dart. We could go through a list of them if we wanted to, Alex. Maybe we will to wrap up this episode. Just look ahead and throw some names out there. But I just want to say something on the coaching and the defensive side of the ball. And honestly, on the roster management as well. The secondary going into the season was a concern. We said that the only thing that's going to hold this defense back from being a top 10 unit would be the coaching staff. We said that so many times, Alex. Because that Shane Bowen was our number one concern with the defense. But at the same time, in the secondary, I said this many times. Everybody was like, hey, we got a CB1 this offseason, Paulson Adebo. I said, well, we got a CB2 who projects as a CB1. How many times did you hear me say that on the show, Alex? Mm-hmm. Paulson Adebo was never a CB1 with the New Orleans Saints. He was a CB2. And the Giants were projecting that he could take a step forward and become a CB1. There was always risk involved with that signing. Paulson Adebo hurt right now. That's a big loss to this Giants defense. Paulson Adebo was not playing great football before he got hurt. He was not looking like a CB1. In fact, Cordell Flott was arguably the New York Giants CB1 even when Paulson Adebo was out there. So management, roster construction, not so great in that regard. And safety, Javon Holland, coming off of a bad year in Miami, thought he would bounce back. Well, he hasn't. And one of the many reasons why, look at what this coaching staff is doing with this defense, Alex. Just look at Jalen Hurts' stats versus man coverage, and then look at his stats versus zone coverage. He is a significantly worse quarterback when playing against zone coverage defenses. So tell me why the New York Giants ran more man coverage than any team in football yesterday. Tell me how that makes sense. He is a quarterback. Jalen Hurts is a quarterback that picks apart man coverage defense. He does genuinely struggle against zone coverage. When the Eagles face a team that plays a lot of zone coverage, that's when they run the ball like crazy. Yesterday, they faced man coverage. They threw the ball, and Jalen Hurts picked them apart. and they got their asses ran all over. The New York Giants did. They couldn't do it in any respect. They couldn't stop the run. They couldn't stop the pass. Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, Tank Bigsby of all people. It doesn't matter. They were just having their way with this defense. And this is a defense that features Dexter Lawrence, Kayvon Thibodeau, Brian Burns, Abdul Carter. Bobby Okereke is a good football player. You want to try and tell me that he's not? You're wrong. He's just being used by a bad defensive coordinator. This DC needs to go. The New York Giants need to fire him now. Get him out of here tomorrow. I don't care. I don't care about the continuity. I don't care about, well, who's next up. Marquand Manuel is the defensive passing game coordinator. He is the defensive backs coach of this team. He used to be a defensive coordinator for the Atlanta Falcons in 2019. He has experience calling plays. Let him do it for the rest of the year. See if he can figure it out, because Shane Bowen clearly cannot figure it out. Get him out of here. He's holding back all of these talented players on this defense, and it's disheartening to watch. You've got guys like Brian Burns. He's already got double-digit sacks. That's what we should be talking about today, Alex. We should be talking about how fantastic of a player Brian Burns is, how fantastic of a player Jaxson Dart is. Instead, we're talking about saving the season, saving the development of the rookie quarterback, firing people because of how bad the rest of this team is. It's so disheartening and disappointing. I can't take it anymore. So I think when you look at the secondary, there were clear and obvious missteps. He let Xavier McKinney go. He tried to replace him in more ways than one. Tyler Nubin and Javon Holland do not add up to being even a fraction of the player that Xavier McKinney is. And it was so obvious that that was going to be the result of this when they just let Xavier McKinney walk in free agency and didn't even make him a contract offer. All because what? He broke his hand during a bye week and came clean and admitted to the team that he made a mistake. He could have hid that. He could have tried to hide that up and cover that up, and he didn't. He came to the team, and they wanted to say, oh, poor leadership on the part of Xavier McKinney. Absolutely not true. He was the biggest leader in that Giants defense. They let him walk through the door. They let Saquon Barkley walk through the door, and they lost the locker room as a result. These guys don't play for this team. They play for themselves. That's why they make those business decisions that you mentioned. That's why they care more about their bodies and their contracts than they do the entire collective of the team. It's a mess. I have no confidence in this coaching staff. I have no confidence in this front office either.
I think that we forget how horrible this front office has dealt with human beings. Right? Who I forget the player that he said, well, don't tell him to pay rent next month. I forget who the player was, but Joe Shane.
That cornerback, yes.
Yeah, Joe Shane said that to somebody, to somebody's agent.
A guy who was a locker room favorite, like one of the lesser known players for fans, one of the top known players in that locker room as a fan or as a player favorite.
Right. I mean, we can go back to how the whole Saquon thing unfolded. Obviously, that was a big stain. But you talk about McKinney, right? You talk about how here's why I get a bit confused and I get a bit angry, honestly, about how Joe Shane has managed the relationships in that locker room. It is very evident to me that he values his draft picks more than players that were here before he got there. You know, and I understand that, like, you want those guys; those are your decisions, but that quite obvious bias is really concerning, and it contradicts how to properly build a roster. Veterans, people that have been around this team organization, understand what the standard needs to be, are important, right? They're important. Sterling Shepard should be a Giant. Like, he's got legs left, and he's with the Buccaneers making next to nothing, okay? They disrespected him. We talked about Xavier McKinney. He owned up to the mistake he made, and they let him go. They didn't even make him an offer. They were like, we don't need you. But meanwhile, I'm watching Deonte Banks literally not try to tackle people and getting reps out there over other people, right, on a weekly basis. Please explain to me how the consequences of what Xavier McKinney did are the same, or equal, if not greater than what Deonte Banks is putting on the football field right now in terms of should he be playing or not, right? McKinney's a great football player. Great football player. There's no questioning that. Deonte Banks is a bad one and still gets playing time. So the Giants have gotten to the point where there's no consequences for poor performance, ever. If you're a bad football player on this team, they will not bench you. They'll just, especially if you're a draft pick, Anthony. If you were a draft pick, you get, like, extra privilege. Why the hell is Evan Neal on this roster? He's not playing, neither is Jalen Hyatt, but they're taking up roster spots when they need depth at quarterback. Right, Anthony? Yesterday I watched Corey Black, who we just picked up off the Jets practice squad, literally last week, play meaningful reps for this team. It is blasphemous. Guys, they value their draft picks far too much because they were their decisions. They're trying to save face. It's as clear as day. They don't have if they had the best interest of the Giants, they would not be on this team. They would be inactive, and they wouldn't have roster spots. They'd have been traded last year when they could have got any sort of value. Jalen I has no value. Evan Neal has no value. They're just getting paid to take up a roster spot and not contribute. That is horrific management. Not to mention the kicking situation. Graham Gano should have been cut. They didn't cut him. He gets hurt. They have a whole other kicking debacle. They lose a game because McAdamy fucking blows. Like, you just... look at the decision-making. Look at the decision-making that Joe Schoen has put forth. Look at the decision-making that Brian Daboll... If Brian Daboll was gone today and they had somebody else, Jaxson Dart's still going to play the same way. Nothing changes. Brian Daboll's not even calling the plays, guys. He's not even calling the plays. He's not doing anything. He doesn't do anything. He doesn't call plays. He doesn't manage the clock well. He doesn't manage timeouts well. What the hell is Brian Daboll actually doing? Aside from setting a losing standard because the coaching staff that he's hired, because of the failure to make critical changes in big moments. We watched Shane Bowen make the same mistake multiple times, and Brian Daboll doesn't have the balls as the head coach to say, we're not doing that again. They had all the time in the world to make a decision regarding the play that they were going to do, but they didn't make against the Broncos, and they didn't make the change. That is on the head coach to stop the DC, to have a plan, to understand what's going on, and have influence. Brian Daboll's not doing anything. Right? He's not doing anything for Jaxson Dart. In fact, we heard all the love stories about Brian Daboll and Jaxson Dart, Anthony. Have we heard any since? No, because they're losing. If Jaxson Dart gets a new head coach and they start winning and they figure out how to win and how to coach and how to not make the same mistake twice, Jaxson Dart is going to be exponentially better. And I will point to Josh Allen as a good example. Josh Allen has been exponentially better since Brian Daboll's departure. In terms of him as a personal player in his development. He helped Josh Allen, but Jaxson Dart, Jaxson Dart just entered the league like this. Brian Daboll did not have years to develop him. Jaxson Dart is just that freaking good. That's the thing.
Jaxson Dart, what he does best is off script. That's not Brian Daboll.
It's all him. It's all him.
It's not Brian Daboll helping him. It's outside of the confinements of Brian Daboll's offense is when we are seeing Jaxson Dart play his best football. When he is not playing in the script of Mike Kafka and Brian Daboll's offense. When he's playing out of structure, out of the scheme, out of the offense, that's when Jaxson Dart looks his best. That, to me, tells you he's being held back by the coaching staff, and he could be a lot better with a coach that could get him to play well within the structure and outside of the structure. That's my take on it.
Yeah, and I'll add in another thing that I think really triggered me yesterday, and it really pointed to the selfishness of this coaching staff. They had Jaxson Dart, after watching Cam Scaboo ankle protrude from his body. They had Jaxson Dart down 3 scores with 2 minutes left on the clock, running the football in and taking direct contact. Why? They can't pass the ball in the red zone? They can't pass the ball? I mean, it goes to show the poor roster construction because they have no depth and no receivers they can trust, right? But they're just sacrificing Jaxson Dart and risking injury. Down 3 scores in a game they've already lost? For what? Look, I have Jaxson Dart on my fantasy team. Love the fact he got the touchdown. But I was watching that like, if he got hurt right there, that's a fireable offense. You know what I mean? Like, there was no reason to put him in danger. No reason at all. Unless they're just trying to make things look better than they are. Make the score look a little bit closer. Make the stats look a little bit better. The system look our red zone numbers a little bit better. It's selfishness. They're selfish coaches, selfish general managers, selfish people that are running an organization that needs to be selfless. Selfish over selflessness. The Giants seem to be operating like a team, and instead they operate like a bunch of individuals trying to save their own asses. And it's been happening for a really long time, and I'm over it, I'm tired of it, and I'm done with it.
I'm with you, man. And, before we do wrap up, I want to kind of make another point here when it comes to Jaxson Dart's development. This kid's not going to develop by throwing passes to Darius Slayton, Wan'Dale Robinson, Daniel Bellinger, and Theo Johnson. He's not going to find success this season, and the Giants are not going to win games unless they add some more playmaking talent. There were rumors, will the Giants get involved in the trade market? Are they going to trade for a wide receiver? Then it sounded like more recently they aren't because they value their draft picks and they don't want to sacrifice that draft capital. Dude, F them picks. Go get some talent.
You got
Give
your
Jaxson Dart a
quarterback.
fighting chance. Like, help your young quarterback win these games because, like I said, the only way that you're going to stunt his growth this season is if you continue to lose games that you should win. So you have to go out there and give him some help and give him some talent that he can win with because he cannot win with the talent that you're giving him right now. So that's why, for me, I don't care about the picks. I don't care that we're 2-6. I don't care that it's unorthodox for a losing football team to trade picks away to bring in a wide receiver talent. This team doesn't draft well anyway. Give me a player who can help Jaxson Dart right now, can help win games right now, can be a playmaker for this team right now. Even if it is in a losing season, okay, but if it's a young player who's going to be under contract this season and next season, it's well worth the draft pick that you're sacrificing to bring him in to help Jaxson Dart this year, to grow with Jaxson Dart next year and the following years. I think the Giants absolutely need to get involved in this trade market. There's a week left until the trade deadline, a week from tomorrow. They need to make a trade. They need to bring in a playmaker, Alex. They got to give Jaxson Dart some damn help.
They absolutely do it. And listen, man, it's sad to see this is happening right now. The injuries have really hurt this team. So, that's definitely a critical point to mention is like, we didn't expect Adebo to be out, Holland to be out. We didn't expect to lose Neighbors. We didn't expect to lose Cam Scaboo. Like the team is shredded to pieces right now. So obviously that hurts and it's going to really make Jaxson Dart's season much more difficult, and the losing is going to compound. Like he's going to lose most of these games going down the stretch, which sucks because it takes a toll. But next year will be a new year, and it'll be a fresh slate, and he'll have his playmakers, some of them back. They'll have new ones on the team. But Anthony, you mentioned trading for a piece. I'll kind of give you a good example of the difference right now. Usually you don't trade those pieces because you're trying to find that quarterback and you want to have the ammo in case you need it to trade up and maybe get a guy that you like. You want to have that ammo as a precaution just in case there's an opportunity. The Giants got their guy, right? We're not looking to trade up to get a Jaden Daniels now. We're not looking to trade up to get a Drake May now. We got our guy. So take that entire element of draft capital and needing it for a quarterback is now a non-argument. What is the difference between, let's use Chris Olave or Waddle or, one of those kind of guys that have proven, talent in the NFL. What is the difference between those guys and a draft pick? One is proven and the other is not, right? The Giants can go get a proven piece, and yes, they'll have to pay them, but you have a rookie quarterback on a rookie contract for the next 4 seasons, and you can extend him, keep the cap hits low, and build void years into the future. You could have 6 to 7 years of affordable Jaxson Dart. The cap hits don't matter, guys. Do not let anyone convince you the cap hits matter, because they don't. Once you get your quarterback on a rookie deal, it doesn't matter. And Jaxson Dart is not the first overall pick making 10, 12, 13, 15, 16 million. He is the 25th overall pick making 2, 4, 6, 8. Vastly different levels of financial commitment there. Do not let people convince you the Giants don't have money, because they do, and they can afford to do this, and they have to do this if a team is willing to trade one of their core receivers. There is no other logic here. That is the only one.
I agree. And listen, as far as the draft picks go, I'll reference Family Guy. A second-round pick for Jalen Waddle, that gets you Jalen Waddle. You can have Jalen Waddle, or you could have a second-round pick, which could be anything. It could even be Jalen Waddle or John Michael Schmitz. It could be trash. But when you trade it for Jalen Waddle, and I'm just using him as an example, you know what you're getting. And the New York Giants, they're a team that needs to know what they're getting, and they need reinforcements right now. They are a football team that cannot punt this season away. The quarterback will not accept that. So you can't just say, well, we're going to hold on to the picks and build for the future, and we're just going to call up a couple more guys from the practice squad and make it work. Shout out Montrell Washington. Let's bring him up and have him get in some good reps. That is basically admitting defeat. That is basically saying we've given up on the season. If the Giants give up on the season, Jaxson Dart's going to lose his mind, and I don't want to see him lose his mind. I want to see Jaxson Dart play out of his mind on the football field. I don't want to see him lose his mind and lose his hope and confidence in the organization, because that's what they do. They cause players, young promising players, to lose their confidence in the organization, and I'm sick and tired of seeing that happen. So the New York Giants, do the right thing, do right by your young quarterback, develop your young quarterback properly, and give him some help. Go out there and get a playmaker to help Jaxson Dart succeed. That's what they need to do. They need to win games now. It's not about using a 2026 draft pick to bring in your own playmaker that you drafted who can help you win games in 2027, right? Because these players need to take time to develop anyway. That 2026 draft pick, Alex, you're probably not seeing positive returns on it till 2027, 2028. I want to see returns right now. I want to see the Giants bring in a guy who helps them right now, who helps them in 2026, week 1 through 17, and hopefully week 20, go into the playoffs and actually make some noise. That's what I want to see. And a 2026 second-round pick isn't achieving that for you. It's just not likely. And you got to play a game of probabilities, and you have to play a game of development, and you have to develop Jaxson Dart properly. And the only way to do that is to surround him with talented and successful people. And so they can do that by adding playmakers. They can do that by getting rid of the untalented and unsuccessful coaches and GMs and everybody. They got to clean house, and they got to fix this for Jaxson Dart. It's time to get real about it. Don't squander this potential. Everybody sees it. Tom Brady said Jaxson Dart has all the traits he looks for in a QB1. He is so impressed. Vic Fangio, the defensive coordinator for the Eagles, one of the best defensive coordinators in the game, said all the teams that pass on Jaxson Dart are going to regret that. Saquon Barkley had high praise for him.
Denver defense.
The Denver defense said he's way better than we thought he was. He's a really good quarterback. Everybody can see it. And if the Giants, if they can see it too, then they need to do right by it. And they need to make sure that they get rid of these bad coaches and they put the right pieces in place to allow this promising young talent to succeed.
We've made every mistake in the book to ruin talent, man. Like, we've watched Brian Dable do it. We've watched Bowen. We've watched Joe Shane. John Mara needs to look himself in the mirror and say, we've already done this. We've already ruined so many players. We've already let so much talent go. We've already been the laughing stock of the league. And listen, he can't look to Joe Shane to be the one that fixes those problems. He's got to be the one. John Mara has to be the one to understand and identify the fact that we've already been down this road before. And we've already messed it up once. Badly. Really badly. Jaxson Dart is better now than Daniel Jones ever was during his time at the Giants. He is having tremendous success with the Colts. And you're seeing firsthand what good coaching, good roster construction, and winning looks like. Those three variables, anything is possible. The Giants have poor roster construction, a spotty offensive line, and bad coaching. And you're wondering why Jaxson Dart is speaking the way he is right now. Like, I'm not going to accept it. The players are elevating the standard. The coaches are setting down here. The players are elevating it to, like, competent. The coaches are dragging it down to the abyss. And so is the GM in roster construction. I don't think John Mara wants to go through the whole process. I know he's going through his own personal issues. I don't think he wants to go through the whole process of turning over the entire thing again, which is why I do not believe that Joe Shane is going to be fired. I think he wants Joe Shane to make all the decisions because he has to sit back and do what he's got to do. And, he's dealing with cancer, so it's a very serious ordeal. But if Joe Shane is kept, which I think right now I don't think should happen, like I said, but I do think will happen based on just my gut feeling, Joe Shane has to go out there and convince somebody, a good winning coach with a winning pedigree, to come here. And there's not many of those around, Anthony. There's not many of those guys around. You're really looking at plucking coordinators for the most part. Brian Flores is suing the Giants. He's not an option. Jesse Minter's never been a head coach before, but he's awesome, obviously. You have Mike McCarthy, who actually, Anthony, you've talked about, is an interesting one.
I want to talk about it. I want to bring that up because if I'm looking at head coaching candidates for the New York Giants, we need somebody preferably with experience, somebody who's been to big games, who's coached winning seasons consistently, right? I know people are going to throw out Mike Tomlin and John Harbaugh. Those guys are not being released by those AFC North teams. That's just not going to happen. But there is a head coach who's done this before, who's readily available and waiting for an opportunity, and it is Mike McCarthy. Now, listen, a lot of fans of football are not fans of Mike McCarthy because he didn't win big games. He didn't win in the playoffs. He didn't win a lot of Super Bowls. He has the one from 2010 that he had with the Packers, and then he coached a great Cowboys team to a lot of playoff losses. I understand, but I will take playoff losses as opposed to not even coming close to the playoffs. I am so sick and tired. Alex, we have fans online talking about Tankathon draft order already, right now. I haven't even put on my fucking Halloween costume, man. Let me put my Halloween costume on before we start talking about draft picks and who the Giants should target in the 2026 draft. You know what? If you hire Mike McCarthy, at the very least you know that you're probably a winning football team that's not talking about draft picks in October. You're at least playing competitive football throughout the entirety of the season. Yeah. And that's what I need. And I'll make a reference that shout out to Chris the Entertainer. I mentioned Mike McCarthy on the Giants Collective show, and the Entertainer said this. he could be the Tom Thibodeau for the New York Giants. Tom Thibodeau helped the Knicks become relevant again.
That's good. I like that.
Exactly. They moved on from Tom Thibodeau, and now they've got Mike Brown. They're hoping that that's the extra piece to get them to get over the hump and win a championship. But they had to become relevant again. They had to become a consistent playoff appearance team again. And that's what Mike McCarthy can do for the New York Giants. He can get them to the games. He can get them to the dance. And once the Giants are in the dance, Alex, that's all they need. We saw that in 2011. We saw that in 2007. Anything can happen once the Giants walk into the playoffs, but they just can't get there with the previous crops of head coaches that they keep bringing in. They need a new head coach, and they need one that can get them to the dance. Mike McCarthy could get them to the dance.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I know a lot of people say, no, I don't like Mike McCarthy. Guys, I think at this point, we need a head coach with substantial experience over a guy that's never done it before. And we've already done it 3 times in a row. Pat Shurmur, Joe Judge, and now Brian Daboll. None of them have ever head coached before. A lot of guys fail their first time. They could come back and do it again in the future. Many guys fail their first time. But let me give you some stats, Anthony, that will probably change some opinions with Mike McCarthy. Mike McCarthy has had 1 season in his entire career where he didn't win more than 6 games. Or win 6 games or more. He had 1 season with Green Bay in 2018 where they went 4-7. He was fired after week 13. Since then, he spent 5 years with Dallas. 3 of those seasons, they won 12 games.
Yep.
12 games. That is more games than the Giants have won in three combined seasons. I don't think the Giants have won 12 games in Joe Shane's, outside of that first season, the last 3 years. I don't think they've won 12 games. That's insane.
They've won 11.
11. They've won 11 games. Mike McCarthy has won 12 games in 3 of his last 4 seasons. The last year, he was 7-10, which is still a good year for the Giants, by the way. His offense, by the way, ranked no worse over the last 4 years. Last year was bad because I know Dak Prescott, I think, missed some time.
Dak was
if I'm not
hurt.
mistaken.
Yep, Dak
he was hurt, so we'll kind of cough it up as Dak was hurt. Is what it is. Those 3 seasons, they didn't rank any lower than 8th. Or any lower than 8th.
Always a top 10 offense.
Always a top 10 offense. He knows how to coach quarterbacks, by the way. He's coached Dak. He's coached Aaron Rodgers. He's coached, Brett Favre. He's coached so many freaking good guys. I want to say he was there with Drew Brees. Potentially, no, I think it was just
let me just add in on top of that in terms of who he's coached. How about who he's had help coach with him?
Yeah.
He's had several coordinators go on to become head coaches. Kellen Moore was the best offensive coordinator in football, arguably, when he was with the Dallas Cowboys. Now he's a head coach for the New Orleans Saints. Who else was on that staff? Dan Quinn, one of the best head coaches in football, now coaching the Washington Commanders after a brief stint as a defensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys. And one thing that I want to clarify, Mike McCarthy was not fired by the Dallas Cowboys. He was not let go by the Dallas Cowboys because he's a bad coach. He was let go by the Dallas Cowboys and not re-signed. Again, not fired. They didn't extend him because Jerry Jones didn't want to pay him. Because Mike McCarthy is a good coach who demands a high contract. The Giants should pay him that contract. The Jerry Jones didn't want to. Okay, that's fine. Jerry Jones has got a Super Bowl window that's closing, and he wants to see if a different coach could step in and maybe spark them to get through the playoffs and into the Super Bowl. Okay, that's fine. That's a different way of looking at it than the New York Giants should have, because the Giants have been so irrelevant for the last 10 years. Get you a guy that makes you relevant. Mike McCarthy is a proven good coach who will get them to win football games again.
Elevate the standard. Listen, some of the guys that he's worked with, Dom Capers, like you said, Kellen Moore, Mike Nolan, Dan Quinn, Brian Schottenheimer, Jim Tom Sula, Mike Zimmer. This guy has worked with some of the best minds in the game. He will, and I'll tell you one thing right now. There will be if you go and grab a coordinator, they're going to have to piece it all together with their own connections, which is spotty because we saw Brian Daboll, how hard it was for him to put that whole coaching staff together. You go and you get Mike McCarthy, he will have a laundry list of coordinators waiting to work for him. Waiting. If you have Jaxson Dart and Mike McCarthy, you will have any single assistant in the league begging to work for you. That is where the Giants will upgrade their entire coaching staff because everybody wants to work with this dude. He's been with some of the best. He is a launch pad for good coordinators and good assistants. Like Kellen Moore is a perfect example. And Mike Zimmer going to the freaking Eagles and having a renaissance in his career. And Dan Quinn, going in and becoming a head coach. He is a launch pad for your career. If you want to bring in good coaches, Mike McCarthy is the guy you want.
Yes. 100% true. And a lot of the coaches that were on his staff are still available because what happened with Dallas, in case a lot of you aren't familiar, yes, they did hire internally. So the offensive side of the staff definitely kept a lot of those guys because Brian Schottenheimer got elevated to head coach. But on the defensive side of the ball, especially, a lot of those guys who were on Mike McCarthy's staff didn't remain with the Cowboys because they all signed 5-year contracts at the same time that Mike McCarthy did. So basically all of them became free agents and none of them got jobs. This is why Jerry Jones was so heavily criticized, because this is actually, in terms of industry practices, this was viewed as a really shady business by Jerry Jones, because you typically do not allow a head coach and his entire staff to play out the entirety of their contract. You make a decision the year before, whether you're extending them 1 year, 2 years, whatever. You give those guys, because it's so many guys, you give them some sort of job security going through the year. Again, Jerry Jones, not good at his job anymore, deserves all the criticism. This is one of the things that you should totally criticize him for. This was poor business practices. He allowed a bunch of guys to just fall into the unemployment line. Like you said, Mike Zimmer went to Philadelphia. Some guys did find some jobs elsewhere, but there are a lot of really good coaches who are not coaching right now because they were waiting for Mike McCarthy to get his next opportunity, and the Giants could give him that opportunity. They could bring in a litany of talented coaches to join the staff and watch how this Giants roster overnight looks just new and improved, just completely reshifts with a good coach at the helm.
Yeah. I also think Joe Schoen needs it. I think Joe Schoen, if they're going to keep Joe Schoen...
I don't think they're keeping Joe Schoen, so I know that you do. I don't think so. Because it's similar to this whole Jerry Jones thing. If they keep Joe Schoen, he's going into the final year of his contract, so you would have to extend Joe Schoen. And I don't think that they should extend Joe Schoen.
Yeah, listen, if they don't bring Joe Schoen back, then that'll be a whole different story. If they do bring him back, and John Mara likes him and wants him there, they're going to need a head coach with experience to help elevate Joe Schoen, because Joe Schoen cannot manage Brian Daboll. He's too hot-headed, he's too volatile, he's too random, and he's not a good enough head coach. They need a guy that sets the standard of the head coach, that Joe Schoen is going to give this guy talent, and this guy is going to maximize that talent. This guy is going to develop that talent. Brian Daboll is a really bad coach when it comes to developing players, and Mike McCarthy is one of the best that will be available. I'm not talking about like of all time, but will be available. McCarthy is one of the best pieces when it comes to actually developing talent, especially quarterbacks.
No, he's really good at developing quarterbacks, and that's why I think it's an attractive pairing with Jaxson Dart. I mean, the guy coached Aaron Rodgers, he coached Dak Prescott, he coached a lot of really good quarterbacks. He knows what he's doing in terms of developing that position, and Jaxson Dart could really benefit from an experienced coach who's won big games like Mike McCarthy, but also is a really good quarterbacks coach. But also on top of that, Alex, I know with Joe Schoen here, man, listen, Mike McCarthy, you're talking about all the coaches that want to line up to work with him. You don't think there's going to be great general manager candidates that are going to line up to work with him too? There are. There are going to be guys who want to be Mike McCarthy's GM. He can find some guys to bring into a front office. He could build a team. The Giants don't need to hold onto any of these relics of the past. Just clean the house. That's my opinion of it. I think it's just time to turn the page, usher in a new era, bring in new uniforms too, like totally remake this team in the 2026 offseason. Bring in a new coach, bring in a new GM, new uniforms, build around the quarterback, let him have an input on everything. Like, make this team for Jaxson Dart because he's so promising, he's so good, and I don't want to see this get squandered. So that's my take on it. And I know we just talked about Mike McCarthy for a good long time here, guys. We're not saying that he's the one and only head coaching candidate that we want.
Just
There's
a
a lot.
good one.
I like Cliff Kingsbury. I know he's a little bit controversial. I think he could use I think he could definitely develop Jaxson Dart. He knows quarterbacks and he develops them well. And I think he's good at building an offense to the strength of his quarterback. And I think that he could use a second chance. I don't think that he was done right in Arizona personally. Yes. I think that Kubiak, who's I think with Seattle right now, he's really promising too. There's anybody from the Vikings staff. The Vikings have a very talented coaching staff. No, literally, I mean, Josh McCown, if you want to go with a quarterbacks coach to a head coach, it's a big jump, but he's a very talented guy who's going to get head coaching looks. There are a lot of interesting candidates. That's the point that I'm trying to make. If Steve Spagnuolo wants to take a head coaching job, he makes a lot of sense. I don't think he will. He's getting paid like a head coach to be a DC, so he probably won't. But again, my point being, there are a lot of candidates, and we are going to break those down on the channel over the course of the next several months as it's becoming more and more likely week to week that Daboll probably does get fired. We'll break them all down. We'll go over all of them, but I definitely wanted to get my take out there on that. Just I think that Mike McCarthy, if you want to look at it from the Thibodeau-Knicks thing, I think he makes a lot of sense for this Giants team.
I agree. I mean, listen, you have to get good first before becoming great. And I think that the Giants are so far from being good because the head coach is just so lost. It worked the first year. It worked the first year where you rah-rahed the whole team and everyone was optimistic and inspired and they pushed to the playoffs and guys, did what they had to do and they really elevated. They had a very easy schedule that season, but we're seeing against a difficult schedule with plenty of talent and investment on this roster, they can't get it done. And it does make Joe Schoen look very bad in the process because there is talent here. It's just not enough because of how. And look, there has to be perfect synergy between the GM and the head coach and the coaching staff. Right now, the coaching staff is, and I'll give Joe Schoen one piece of credit here. It's hard to really see what his picks are when the coaching staff is so poor at developing the talent and they're so poor at actually positioning the talent within a scheme to succeed. So that is the one silver lining I will give Joe Schoen, is that we don't really know what any of those players will be because they've all been put through the master class or the disaster class Brian Dable experience and Shane Bowen experience, and even going back and forth with Mike Kafka, there's been no consistency. So it's hard to kind of sit here and act like anyone could succeed in that environment. So that's why I do think that Joe Schoen will be retained, just because I think that some of his processes have been okay, but I do think there's a lot of preferential treatment that needs to be dissipated. And I think they need a veteran, experienced head coach to say, Joe, this is not going to work. This is not working for me. We need to change this. We need to do this. We need to do that. This is how we got to operate. I have 20 years of experience as a coach, 10 plus as a head coach. I know how to get shit done. You know what I mean? We need a guy like that. We need a guy to drag us from the bottom to, even if it's just getting into the playoffs and seeing what happens. That's football we didn't have before, guys. If Mike McCarthy gets to the playoffs, I'm super happy with it. I'm happier right now. We've gone down the direction. I'll end it with this, Anthony. We've gone down the path 3 times now of trying to hit a home run with a new head coach, with a new inexperienced first-year head coach. We've tried 3 different times now to hit a home run there. 3 different times, right? It is time for us to change that strategy. It is time for us to go get an experienced guy that is going to elevate the standard, understands what it's like to build a roster, and maximize that potential. And Mike McCarthy isn't just sitting around, guys. He's bouncing around the league learning. That's what he did when he took that year off. He was reinventing his entire strategy. I love that about him, the fact that he is not staying quiet. He's not sitting still. He's constantly learning and adapting and evolving. And I think that the NFL is changing so fast. This year off for him could be really beneficial for a team like the Giants that gets all that experience and the modern twist he's going to bring. And he's not afraid to hire young offensive coordinators. You want to know why, Anthony? Because he can keep everything else in check, right? He can help them not make the same mistake twice. Brian Dable is not helping his coordinators at all. They're continuously doing the same things over and over again that are problematic. And that is the sign of a bad head coach. So, right now I do think an experienced guy like McCarthy does make a lot of sense just to get us out of this hellhole. I'm not saying Mike McCarthy is amazing. He's going to do all this stuff and transform. He is going to drag us out of the hellhole we are in because we do not have standards right now. And Jaxson Dart, you saw his face yesterday. I'm very nervous that we're going to ruin this kid. Very, very nervous unless they get the next process right.
I agree with you. I mean, he looked defeated yesterday in a way that I really don't want to see a rookie quarterback look 5 starts, 6 starts, whatever it is, into his career. I need to see this team actually put in the effort to win the games for the quarterback. I like Jaxson Dart too much. Everybody knows I loved Jaxson Dart in the pre-draft process. I said he would be the steal of the draft in January. I am very happy that he is a New York Giant. I will be unbelievably upset. It could be the final straw for me if they mess up the development of Jaxson Dart. I don't want to see this kid fail. I want to see him succeed, and I want to see him succeed with the Giants logo on his jersey. I don't want to see him go to any other team in the league and then find success inexplicably. The Giants need to make sure that they develop this kid properly while he is here, because he wants to be here and he wants to succeed here. But for some reason, all the players that want to be here, that want to succeed here, somehow they find all that success elsewhere. No more of that. Get the success to happen here. Find out the way to get that done. Crack the code. I don't care. I need to see Jaxson Dart become the franchise quarterback for the New York Giants, and I think he can be. Now it's up to the Giants to make sure that it happens. But guys, that's pretty much going to wrap this one up. We went over a lot in this very long, beefy episode. As you can tell, we had a lot to get off our chests. I mean, listen, the Giants lost 38-20 against the Philadelphia Eagles after beating them 2 weeks earlier. They whooped them for 4 quarters in week 6. Week 8, they got whooped. How does that happen? I don't know. It's a frustrating team to watch. There's a lot of frustration to let out, so that's what we did today. And I will end it by saying, once again, prayers to Cam Scaboo, man. My heart goes out to you. I love you, kid. Keep balling. You'll be fine. battle through this, and we'll see you in 2026, hopefully with a great team around you so we can win some games with Scat, man. I love that kid. But we'll catch you on the next one, guys. Make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe to the channel if you're new and ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts down below. And if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and make sure to stay tuned for future episodes. So catch you on the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Jaxson Dart.